Okay, art 1-2. This is cloth part 2. So cloth demonstration part 2. It's all about blending. So I am going to have my small and medium blender. And then, put this on a little bit. Let me move this. That way you get like a above view a little bit better. Okay. So the key is, we just spent all that time with the shapes and all that. We're going to keep the shapes in the first round of blending. So if it's a small area, small blender. Slightly larger, medium blender. And then we'll use that big one plus some tissue. Okay. We got our cast shadow. Kind of like go along the edge to keep my edges. And then, okay, just going to be really careful on the edge. And I'm not going to apply a whole lot of pressure. So this is just like the glass where you really do want to get it really smooth because you don't want to go back. Nobody ever wants to. Okay, that's a tiny little area by the apple there. I'm going to use my small blender. Get my cast shadow. And then blend in. I feel like that needs refined with mechanical. Small blender. And then I feel like that part got a little bit too dark. I'll pull some light back out. Okay, we're probably not going to touch that part again. It will not take that long for everything. All right, so I'm going to kind of blend along my edge, and then I'm looking at my picture and how this part kind of like fades up a little bit, so then I'm going to fade up. I'm going to get rid of that shape, especially where it's supposed to look smooth. And so for cloth, sometimes you would blend in the direction, like I'm just blending in a curved manner, because these parts are curved. So sometimes we blend with the form. So which, is it curved? It's just like we did for the apple, curved. We blended vertical for the piece of wood. We blended in the direction of the lines on the shell. Okay, notice how I'm avoiding the light areas, so I'm not blending over everything yet. Okay. And this can be fuzzy. I mean, the bottom edge you might want to get a little bit better, but we're going to erase out too a little bit in that part. Again, you can get it a little bit into your border. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so it's going to look bad before it looks good. I call this the awkward stage. Your art always goes through it. A lot of people just want to stop because they're like, ooh, this doesn't look good. Well, you have to kind of persevere. You got to work through it. True in art, true in life. Got to keep going, keep pushing through. Eventually you'll get there. That's what I tell myself when I sit in my night classes until 10 p.m. Like, you just gotta keep going. Okay, so small blender right underneath the shell. Blending in that cast shadow that we kind of faked in some spots. And then I'm gonna pull it out into the wrinkles. So I'm gonna fade out a little bit. Okay, switching back to medium size blender. So this is when, like, yeah, circular motion, but also kind of go back and go with the form of the folds and creases. I'm trying to be very careful not to mess up the edge of that shell. Okay. Good thing I gave you guys multiple. This paper is getting dirty. So I think you have like 2 or 3 pieces of that. So you're gonna save one for self-portrait and one for your test. So I'm trying not to press very hard because I know this area looks, it's a little, I think it's a little bit too dark, but small blender around the flower. I'm gonna go ahead and just go around this flower so that while I have the small blender in my hand, that way I don't have to touch it again. Okay. All right, moving over. And of course you can turn your paper so your arm is comfortable. Like this actually like kills my shoulder to keep it upright. I would like be turning it all around, but I want you to be able to tell like what part I'm working in. So definitely turn it because the key is to like get smooth value. And if your arm is comfortable, it's easier. We're losing that edge with the shell. Let's take a little mechanical. We're gonna fake a little shadow. I mean, there's a shadow on that edge. Oh, just hold on. I feel like I once had it darker and it looked weird, but maybe now it needs to be there. Okay, so darken that edge of the shell, kind of pull it in on the side. We'll just kind of touch blend with the small blender. There, then it visually separates from the cloth. Okay, back to blending. So since you have learned how to do cloth and wrinkles for your self-portraits, I'm not really going to review how to do cloth and wrinkles because you're going to draw them with a viewfinder anyway. You'll have this video to reference. It's the same. It just happens to be on a person. But what I will do and demonstrate is like, what if you're wearing a texture? You know, what if you're wearing a sweater? Very few of you actually chose to wear like, which is fine, really complex things, but usually I don't really demonstrate cloth ever again. So when people move on to 3-4, we might talk about it and like do some reminders, but this is like the time that you're learning it. So I will say that most students, when I ask them like, okay, what was the project that you learned the most in? It's this one. Because it applies to so many other things. Like you can, like this kind of looks like water, mountains, you know. It looks like a lot of different things. And the process is the same. And then you guys are always amazed at your ability level, like the result you're able to get. I'm going to keep this all white because I do want it to look like it's closer to the light. Okay, clean edge next to the piece of wood. I'm going to fade that out. Actually, I think I went over too far. Erase. Erase out a little bit. Okay. I'm just gonna fade that out. Okay, it's all blended, but still really shapy. So now we are going to carefully take your big blender, and this is slanted, so you're going to use the whole slanted side. You can see where I kind of tested it out a little bit. Okay, so this is mostly for the light areas, and I'm really hesitant to show you guys this because sometimes people are just like, oh, I'm going to blend over the whole thing. Don't blend over the whole thing. You're going to reblend the bigger dark shapes. Then gently, circular motion, you're going to go back and do a whole layer over the light values. But I'm kind of blending in my shapes a little bit. So everywhere is going to have a value now. We're graying it all down. And then I'm going to come back with medium because I do want to get like a little bit, I want to, blend in a little bit more. The downfall of this is if you weren't careful about having something underneath your hand, or you were touching your paper a lot, even when you were drawing your grid, now all of your fingerprints show. And so you want to erase those if you see them. And so that's the downfall of this blender too. Kind of like really picks up all of the oils left behind from your fingers, the side of your hand. Like I think I have a fingerprint there. This looks like a fingerprint. Okay, so this is just to kind of give us that kind of soft effect. And we're going to come back with toilet paper or tissue and blend even more. And then we'll add another layer to the darkest values. Okay, so my edges weren't perfect because we're going to come back with medium size blender. Okay, so you're going to take your tissue, fold it in half, fold it in 4. This is what we did for the sky and surface. Okay, put your finger, wrap it around, tuck it, hold it. Okay. So circular motion, not pressing hard at all. I'm just trying to kind of smooth out what I just did with my big blender. In the center area, be so careful. So now it looks all flowy and fuzzy. Okay, that was the big part. Medium-sized blender. I'm gonna go back over my shapes, and so my blender right now is dirty, so I can kind of just use it. So I'm double checking my image, like, can I go back? And I am gonna have old school wooden, like in case I need to. Like I feel like this apple got messed up a little bit. Okay. I'm getting close to my edges. Okay, and then I'm gonna kind of refine as I go with old school wooden. So, like here, I kind of lost that edge. And I'm gonna fade it back out. And there's like a little bit of a highlight. So that will look weird at first until we go back and do it everywhere. Okay, so over here, because we used it to make all the light midtones, then we need to go back and darken the darker midtones. I'm kind of blending as I go. And then if there's any other shapes that don't look quite blended or faded, like I feel like here it should fade a little bit more. I'm gonna go over some of that. Okay, this edge needs to be a little more precise, so I kind of lost that little peak. Yeah. And I'm just gonna fade it into what I have. That way I don't have to add everywhere. I'm just gonna really kind of refine the areas that I lost detail in, and if they're dark. So I'm gonna fade that out a little bit more. Actually, now that I'm looking, this edge is darker. It's lighter here and darker here, so. Add a little bit, darken that edge. Okay, a little bit in here, especially like up in that peak, that crease, the indent. And I'm just gonna fade it down so we don't have to do that everywhere, because I do like how soft that other area looks in the bottom left corner. Blend out a little bit more. Okay, so I'm gonna go back over my cast shadows. This edge needs to be a little darker. Kind of refined. Definitely this edge. Fading up. Okay. Just gonna double check in here, because now that we're looking, I mean, now that everything's on there, I do feel like this needs to be a little bit darker. So I'll go a little darker. Fading into what we have. So we're kind of refining as we go. Our next step is, after this, is going to be erasing out highlights, and then we're done with the cloth. And then we will do a background. I'm going to show you guys like a picture of like multiple backgrounds. I'm going to take a picture of this, print it on like different type of paper so I can do many different backgrounds, so that you can kind of see what they look like before you choose which one you want. Kind of depends on what effect you kind of like. And so we're almost done. We're in the home stretch. Home stretch. I like that stuff. Oh, because it curves too. Okay, let's erase that. That's what it looks like. The more you look at it, the more you see. Which, as an artist, sometimes when you start really looking at things, like there's so much detail in things, sometimes it's overwhelming, so just do what you can. Okay, I'm gonna go along here, go a little darker, fading out. I'm gonna switch blenders, use my tiny one, the small. A little bit in here. Slightly darker in here. I'm going to fade fade that out a little bit just so it doesn't look so bad. Almost done. I swear, almost done, almost done. Okay, so I'm gonna go darker on that crease and kind of fade it in. A little bit better than what I had. I feel like that didn't fade very well. Then I'm gonna fade this part into the shadow that we faked to separate the flower. Okay, medium blender. So if it looks kind of liney or smudgy, like, make sure you blend at this part, because we're not going to go back and blend again. We're going to erase the highlights and blend those slightly, but we're not going to blend. And like, especially, you know, if you feel like your objects look good, I mean, the cloth, unfortunately, can make or break your project. So it either like really makes it look real, or it looks really bad because there's so much of it. So I would really take your time. Try your best. Okay. That's gonna get sharp. I feel like that's dark enough. I do want to take my medium blender though. I feel like there's this ridge that I didn't put in. I'm just gonna add it in there. Okay, so I'm gonna go over that shadow again because we lost it. Maybe it was actually, oh, it is bigger than I thought. Okay. Probably should have used the viewfinder to draw that thing. Okay. Looks like a tadpole or something. Okay, I feel like I drew this part wrong. So, if you're okay with it, you don't have to do this. But I'm gonna curve that part back out. Blend over it. Okay, add. This needs to come down. And I am going to fade this out a little bit more and probably so I'm going to go curve to kind of and flowy to get it to transition into what's there. Okay, I feel like back here I just need to do an extra layer of blending. Okay, now with pencil top eraser, we're gonna erase back out the highlights, and I'm gonna use my medium blender, but I'm gonna use the end of it to kind of soften, and tissue. So have your tissue ready. Okay, so looking at where the light is hitting. So I'm looking at, it's really at the tops of things. But so I erase out the line. That looks kind of bad. So then I'm gonna kind of fade it in with my eraser. And then, if it's a small area, I'm gonna use the back end of the blender to kind of get rid of the eraser marks. Okay, so then, like, there's this crease right here. And we'll erase out the top of that piece. And it fades over. And then that is fairly large, so I'm just gonna kind of soften the edge and soften that slightly with the tissue wrapped around my finger. Okay, then, so we're drawing back in the highlights. Okay, so here, along this edge, and it goes all the way to the top, and then it turns into this one. Okay, so but here, I'm going to fade it down a little. So then I'm going to use the back end of my blender to soften that. And I feel like this part still needs to clean up a little bit. Okay, let's try tissue in this part too. Just along to kind of blend out where we erased. Okay, so I feel like this part is small, but then it kind of fades out a little bit. So I'm actually gonna use my blender just a little bit to soften that. Okay. Okay, looking over on this side. No, actually, you know what? This should be darker. Hold on. Okay, so the little wrinkly pieces I'm going to kind of erase back out and pull back out my highlight. And fake one on this side. I'm going to go over that with tissue just to soften all that up. So it's more subtle. Okay, highlights over here along the top. And it looks like light was kind of hitting on that side. We'll fade that out. Okay, so I'm gonna use the end of my blender to fade that out. Okay, so I feel like all the highlights are done over here. Moving off to the other side. Okay, so where this petal is, where the leaf, leaf. Fading down a little bit. And then super gently, kind of going back around the edges of that to soften it back up. Maybe a little bit there. Okay, so I have highlight there. Okay, then let's check down by the shell. I'm just gonna super gently kind of go along the edge of that with the top of the blender. Okay, so this part was lighter, kind of fading out. And we'll use the back end of the blender. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like the peak of this part, but then it kind of fades out. And then the other peak here kind of fades out. Okay, so let's fade this down, circular motion. Gently, gently, gently. Okay, so since that's a little bit of a bigger area, we're gonna use tissue. Wrapped around, I'm just doing 2 layers wrapped around my finger so I can get like a fine point. Okay, let's see. Now we just have this part that the apple's sitting on. Okay, so along this edge, go, and it kind of fades out when you get to the left. And then, kind of around that cast shadow, and it's brighter, but then it kind of fades down. So I'm gonna lighten my pressure. I loaded that piece. Okay. Back end of my medium blender, especially along the edges. And I still feel like you can see that line, so. Probably go back in with my blender just a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna zoom out slightly. Take one last look. I kind of squint my eyes and, sorry, hold on, my camera came untaped. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I kind of squint my eyes, make them fuzzy, and double check my image, and you can hold it at arm's length away. So I'm kind of like squint my eyes, making fuzzy, checking here. I still feel like this part needs to be darker in here. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit. So this is the difference between an A and a B. You actually take your time to go back, and if something's not right, fix it. Fix it. Okay, double checking here. So I'm squinting my eyes, making fuzzy, double checking here. Okay. I feel like these got a little too dark, but that's all right. Now I'll just fade out with the medium blender so it doesn't look so obvious. Okay, double checking this side. All right, I do think I need a little bit of a highlight on that piece. I'll definitely fade that down. And a little more of a highlight here. Okay, blending super gently. I am going to use the tip of it because I feel like that got a little bit light. Okay, we're gonna call this cloth done. And if you see any areas from far away, in person this doesn't look as dark, but if you see any areas from far away that still do not look soft and smooth, go back and blend them. Okay. Hopefully it turned out well. Hopefully you're impressed with your skills. And in the next video, it will be, you're gonna choose what background you want, but you're gonna look at a picture and then choose the background. Okay, I'll see you in the background videos.